Does fasting improve your metabolism, boost your metabolism, and increase the rate of fat loss? Now, this is one thing that if you are someone who is a great proponent of intermittent fasting, you're in that zealot-like camp that you think fasting is the best thing since sliced bread, you think it's better when it comes to initiating more fat loss, it's better than any other process for losing weight, well, you might be someone who says, yes, it must boost my metabolism. It must increase my rate of fat loss. Therefore, it is the best diet protocol, and everybody under the sun should be following the same process. But is that actually true? Now, to find out the answer to that question, we need to obviously look at the research that is available. And in this episode of the show, I'm going to dig into a study from 2019, so a fairly recent study, so we can answer this question once and for all. So if you're watching this on YouTube, thank you. Thank you for joining me. Thank you for watching this particular episode of the show. A like, subscribing to the channel would be absolutely awesome. And if you're listening to this on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you consume your podcasts, again, thanks for listening to this episode of the show, giving a rating and a review, maybe even sharing some screenshots into your Instagram stories or your Facebook stories would also be awesome. I like to see who's listening to the show and whereabouts you are in the world. That's absolutely awesome. So with that said, let's get on with the meat and potatoes of this particular episode, and let's talk all about fasting and your metabolism. When it comes to fasting, there's usually two sets of people that enter into this type of debate. One is the proponent of fasting, the person that is fully backing it 100%. They feel that skipping breakfast turns you into this fat burning machine that while you're not having that food early in the morning, you are burning through that belly fat, you are burning through all of your body fat, all over your body, you're making so much progress, and that's what's really going to give you the edge. It's going to give you the opportunity to steal a march on all of those people that are chowing down on breakfast and really stopping that fat loss process from happening. Conversely, you get the other group who will tell you that these periods of fasting are really bad for you and your body is going to dip into, let's call it starvation mode. Your body is going to say, shit, I don't know where the next meal is coming from, so fucking hell, let's grab onto this body fat that we have for dear life and let's not let it go. That means that fasting for that person is got to be the worst thing that they could possibly do, the direct antithesis of losing body fat. Your body is going to go into this mode where it just hunkers down for dear life and just clings on to every morsel of body fat that you have. So who's right and who's wrong? Is it a case that fasting is this process whereby you are increasing the rate of fat loss, you are turning yourself into a fat burning machine, or is this starvation mode thing real? And should you be worried about that if you are someone who likes to fast? In reality, both groups are idiots because you don't have to be at the extreme end of the nutritional debate to do the best that you possibly can for losing weight. You're not going to be in starvation mode if you skip a meal. You are not going to turn into a fat burning machine if you fast. The answer just lies somewhere in the boring grey area in the middle. As with most things with nutrition or fitness and things like that, the extremes where these zealots, these groups of people that are just treating nutrition as some form of religion and either you're in my tribe or I'm at war with you, it seems a crazy way to approach your nutrition. So yes, there's probably some benefits to every different diet when it comes to does it help you adhere to your calorie deficit? Great. For you as an individual, fasting might be a great opportunity for you to really stick to your calorie deficit for the long term. But that doesn't mean it's right for everybody. It doesn't mean that you are burning more body fat than somebody else, and it certainly doesn't mean that you're going into starvation mode. So let's have a look at that research from 2019 that showed that this is the case, that there really is no benefit or no hindrance from fasting when it comes to metabolism and when it comes to losing body fat. The study looked at your metabolic rate and also substrate utilization or substrate oxidation. Now, what the fuck does that mean? So substrate utilization or substrate oxidation is basically whether your body is using carbohydrate or fat for fuel at any given point in time. Now, depending on what activities you're doing and how you're actually living your life generally, your body is always consistently, seamlessly switching between these substrates in terms of the fuel it chooses to use. Now, often it's a mix. It's some body fat, or some fat, should I say, and it's some carbohydrate. It's often a mix. When you go into extremes of things like high intensity exercise, you're going to push more towards the carbohydrate end. When you're at rest, when you're sleeping at night, you're going to push more towards burning body fat for fuel. Anywhere in between, basically your body is kind of switching and changing that mix of substrate utilization. So what this study looked at was, does fasting affect that substrate utilization in some way, shape or form? So does fasting lean you more towards this using body fat and dietary fat for fuel versus carbohydrate? So let's have a look at what the results actually showed. The study showed no difference in energy expenditure. So that means calories burned were no different between the fasting group or the group that had breakfast. So that means that there's no starvation mode, but there's also no magical fat loss benefits when it comes to fasting either. Now, acutely, the fasting group did burn more fat in the early part of the day. But the interesting thing is that that substrate utilization switches around. So if you are fasting in that early part of the day and maybe burning more body fat, you switch to more carbohydrate utilization later in the day. Likewise, if you're having breakfast, maybe you burn more carbohydrate earlier in the day and more body fat later in the day. Again, over the course of 24 hours, the results are exactly the same. In terms of body fat loss, weight loss, there was no difference between each of those two groups. Now, I know what some of you will say is, what about if I'm doing keto? Because if I'm doing keto, then surely I am this fat burning machine because I'm eating fat, I'm eliminating carbohydrates. So surely in terms of my substrate utilization, I should be all the way over to the fat side. I'll be churning through this body fat constantly throughout the day. But the key thing you have to remember here is that you are eating more fat. You're eating more dietary fat. So again, it comes down to a calorie scenario. If you haven't got a calorie deficit in place, you are just going to burn through the dietary fat that you're eating and not tap into the body fat that you have stored. So there's a key thing there. You still have to have a calorie deficit. Doing keto is not going to miraculously turn you into this fat burning machine. And if you look at the research that looks at low carb versus higher carb diets, again, there is no significant difference between the two when you equate for calories, protein, fiber, and other sorts of macronutrients. So again, really, there is no difference between these diets. The core principle you need to come back to is your calorie deficit. Now, one other thing that the fasting group might throw out there is autophagy, this kind of removal of dead cells and this being beneficial for health and all of these good things. Now, the thing that people forget when it comes to autophagy is that exercise does induce that process. So if you're exercising, resistance training, things like that, you have this autophagy process happening anyway. Fasting doesn't necessarily have to be the only mechanism for it to happen, which often people who do the fasting protocols often forget. The other thing is that, is autophagy really that important? Is it the thing that you should be focusing on? Or really does it come back to what are the practical things that you can do on a daily basis that really are going to affect your lifestyle, your habits, your behaviors over the long term that reduce your body fat to healthy levels so that you can maintain that healthy lifestyle that you want? The key things you're really going to focus in on is your calorie deficit, making sure that you're eating good foods, nutritious foods the majority of the time over the long period. That is going to have the most benefit on your health. Adding in some resistance training, maybe some cardiovascular training, things like that. This is all going to make your body work as efficiently as possible, and you're going to tap into that autophagy and all that sort of good stuff. It's really not something that you have to worry about consistently day after day, or it's not this big thing that the fasting group really make it out to be. So my advice on this one is to keep things as simple as possible. Create that calorie deficit, prioritize nutritious foods in your diet, keep things simple. And when it comes to the type of diet that you want to follow, pick the one that is going to help you adhere to your calorie deficit and is going to be one you enjoy and you can see yourself using for the long term. If you're doing keto right now because it's the popular thing to do, but actually you love carbohydrates, and once you kind of got through this process, you're going to reintroduce carbohydrates, the chances are you've maybe not thought about calories, you maybe not thought about how you're going to do that and still sustain the results that you've achieved. So make sure from the outset you are following a dietary protocol that you can actually sustain. But overall, the principle, calorie deficit, nutritious foods, and adherence is really where you need to start. So hopefully this episode of the show shed some light, got some clarity when it comes to fasting, metabolism. Should you be doing it? Should you not be doing it? Again, it's probably not worth overcomplicating the process. Now, if you want more information about calories, macros, how all of that sort of stuff works, I'm going to put some links in the show notes that are going to be of real benefit to you. So you can access my free online calorie and macro calculator. So if you want to find out how many calories you should be eating in order to initiate weight and fat loss, you can do that. You can use that for free and you can basically calculate what you need in about 60 seconds. It's really, really simple and straightforward. Once you download that, I'm going to send you a few things over the course of the next few days. I'm going to send you a calorie guide so you can figure out all of the whys and wherefores, all about protein, macros, nutrition labels, all of that sort of stuff, all contained within that guide. So make sure you look out for that. And if you're a beginner, I'm going to send you a free 4-week training program. There's also guides on combating cravings and lots of other stuff. So as soon as you access that calorie calculator, you're going to get access to all of that information as well. And if you're someone who wants to skip that whole process and say, Simon, can you just look after this for me? Can you tell me what to do, point me in the right direction, manage my nutrition, sort out my training program, make sure all my workouts are effective so that I'm building muscle, building those glutes, those pecs, those arms that I really, really want, and you're looking after my nutrition, so you're making sure that I am in a calorie deficit, I am moving forward, and more importantly, you're establishing the habits, the lifestyle behaviors that are going to actually keep it there for the long term. I'm going to put a link into the show notes that's going to show you all the information about my online coaching program, the Lean Life Method. So you can find out all about how I get the results for clients and also how it can work for you and give you that leaner, healthier life that you want and the body that you've been striving for. But for now, all I'm going to say is thanks so much for listening. Thanks so much for watching. Keep living the lean life, and I'll see you for the next episode of the show.